name is Kyle Cash, and I'll be giving a presentation on George Washington Cable, a short biography, and I am in the Posson Jone group. George Washington Cable was born in 1844 in New Orleans, and he attended a boys' high school in his teen years. Around his mid-teens, he had to leave this high school, though, because his family needed help in the customs house. Customs houses are locations located at ports where a country's exports and imports are examined. It's much like the customs you'd find at an airport. And this is because bootlegging was still something that happened at this time, and other things were being snuck into the country, and everything has to be examined. He left the customs house when the Civil War came around, and he decided to fight for the Confederate Army, and he fought until the war ended. He decided to marry Louise Bartlett, and they had 5 children. They had 4 daughters and 1 son. And George Cable's main source of income was selling short stories to different magazines. This, as we all know, wasn't a very good way to make money, so he had to find a better source of income, and so he decided to become a bookkeeper, although he still was a writer. While he was a bookkeeper, he met Edward King. Edward King was a publicist for the magazine Scribner's. He was with one of his editors, and he was collecting a group of stories for a collaboration of stories called The Great South, which, of course, as the name suggests, is just stories about the South. And George Cable was a very much known author of the South. Like, most of his stories were about the South, so he was a great candidate. And his story, Sir George, was actually published in Scribner's. Now, his first novel, after having this story launched in the magazine, really boosted his career and his renown as an author. So his first novel that was published was The Grandissimes. It was disliked by the Southerners and liked by the Northerners, and this is because George Cable had a very strange view for a Southerner on African Americans. In the South, African Americans, as we all know during this era, were very disliked and had a very negative view towards them. So Cable was pegged as a negrophiliast, which, when first reading the word, comes off as strange, but it simply means that he had a very strong respect for African Americans, and he was sympathetic towards all the problems that they had to go through. The Grandissimes was a result of the Brass Coup, which was a different story that he decided to write after reading the Code Noir. And the Code Noir was a decree posted by France's King Louis XIV, and this basically laid out the rules of slavery. And this disgusted George Cable because he didn't know how anybody could think like that. So he used this feeling of disgust to write the Brass Coup, and then he wrote the Grandissimes. And in the Grandissimes, he connects the racial pride in Creoles with the broader problems, such as the white and black problems after the Emancipation Proclamation was made, when all of the slaves were freed in the South and still living amongst the slave owners. This view on African Americans sparked an attack from Charles Gayard. He was a very well-known historian in Louisiana, and with this, along with his new Grandissime novel, Mark Twain took notice to him. And Mark Twain actually invited George Cable to go on a joint reading tour with him. Mark Twain, at this time, was writing Huckleberry Finn, which, as we all know, is about a boy and a slave in the South. And there are it's small but noticeable undertones of positive views towards African Americans. And since George Cable is very outright in his, they seemed to go hand in hand, is what Mark Twain thought. So George Cable went with Mark Twain around 80 cities, including Massachusetts, which is where he decided to move after this reading tour. And another interesting fact about George Cable is that he was a singer. And in this reading tour, he decided to give a Creole love song as an ending to one of his presentations. And as I said, he moved to Massachusetts because he loved the city and he wanted his family to live somewhere where he wasn't so disliked. After getting this reputation as a Negrophilius in the South, it was very hard for him to continue to live in the South. And he had 2 more children after he moved to Massachusetts.